everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Get the Fork Out. We have the crew coach, Karine, and we are going to talk about mental health. So I think that's where the chipperness ends, and when we can get real and talk about mental health and things that have happened quite recently in the industry. And I will possibly open up a little bit about being a male and mental health in regards to men. Welcome, Karine.
Thank you for having me. So excited to be here.
Absolutely. Why don't you give us a little bit about your background and then that connection of the background to yachting.
Okay. So I used to be in prison. I love throwing that out there.
I did not expect to hear that.
What were you doing in prison? I was a clinician in many prisons across Australia, specifically working with men.
Wow.
I didn't want to work with females because I heard they could be very bitchy, and I thought that could be quite dangerous. So I thought men would be a lot easier to deal with rather
we just get
than
violent, apparently.
Female population. The stories that I heard that went down in the female prison, they're very conniving and they can be very, very dangerous. Yes, so that's a story for another day. But my background is in psychology and organizational psychology and counseling. I worked in the industry as crew over 10 years ago, and that really consolidated for me what I wanted to do with my career because I was unsure. And I decided I want to help people. And I loved working on board in terms of I felt like I was utilizing my skill set when we had crew dynamics occurring. So we all know what it's like working on board and how things can quickly spiral out of control due to miscommunication or working with different personalities. And I found myself in the middle of these conflicts, but felt it really rewarding to be that support person and to problem solve. So I left the industry and then studied further. And then I got an opportunity to work in a prison on placement. And I thought, you've got to be kidding me. I was like, I didn't want to work with men. I didn't want to work with prisoners. It was the last thing. I thought I was going to work with children. And I thought, Karine, you know what? If you want to be the best at what you do, just do the hardest job. So I dived in the deep end, and it was the best thing I have ever done. I loved it. I learned so much about human behavior and a different side of life that you would never, ever come across. And the irony was that I was working with children because they were emotionally wounded in a bad way. So it was just weird that how that came about. And then to cut the story short, it was very hard to make an impact because when it comes to funding in a prison system, the budgets, they're the ones that's the budget. So we didn't have and there were situations where I felt that there was injustice occurring, and one of my values is justice, and it just burnt me out. And I thought, you know what, I can make an impact elsewhere. And a great surprise, the same issues that are still occurring. So mental health issues and poor leadership were the two.
That's pretty incredible situation that you found yourself in, and sounds like you thrived in. And it is quite sad. I'm sure that happens globally, where the prison system is underfunded, and these people that are wounded children that need help, there's no money for them. There's nothing to really do. Just get pushed back out in the public.
Yeah, it's tragic. And that's why we call it the revolving doors, because they come in and out, in and out. And the parallels between prison. And so similar.
Yeah.
What you're going to wear, you miss major life events, and you lose your sense of freedom somewhat.
Yeah. I've never would have drawn those parallels before, but it's quite funny. Yeah. Ironic. What, and so you're a crew member 10 years ago, and then how did you make that jump? Like, and what did you have to do? Well, I mean, so you went back to school, then you went from prison to working in the yachting industry as a counselor?
So what happened was I was doing my research when I was studying my business degree, and the only competitor was the crew coach, which established in 2009. And so I decided to go over to Europe, to France, to meet the crew coach. I was planning a holiday anyway, sent her a text message, and I said, "Hi, Alison, would you like to meet up for a coffee?" And she said, I was living in France for 17 years, but now I'm back in Melbourne. And I left Melbourne. I was living in Melbourne for 7 months before taking over the crew coach.
Which place?
But my intuition, but this is the power of intuition, which is amazing. If you can harness your intuition, you would make, I would say, more accurate life decisions.
Yeah.
So my intuition told me, Karine, whatever you do, when you get back to Melbourne, you got to call this lady. The inner voice was like, well, what are you going to talk about? What are you going to ask her? I didn't know she was selling the business. And so I followed my intuition, and she said to me, hey, I'm looking to get rid of the business. Would you be interested? You've got 2 days to decide. I thought, oh my word, what a big decision to take financial responsibility of a company. And I had just moved to Melbourne to start a new job in a restorative jail, the first in Australia. And I wasn't planning on starting a business for another 2 years. So I said yes. And I flew to Perth. I lived with my father for a year. I was doing interviews, kneeling, my Yachting International Radio interviews, and just starting to interview crew before I got the gig with Yachting International Radio. But I used to kneel next to the bed because there was only one part in the house where there was Wi-Fi signal. And I would be kneeling on the bed while interviewing people, and no one had any idea. My desk was my bed. I didn't have a desk or anywhere to sit at. So
I love it.
Yeah, basically started from nothing. And now I have 10 different services at the crew coach.
That's incredible. I love stories like that, where it's just like, just persevere. It's not perfect, but we can hide it for a bit and then just get on with it.
Yeah, it's consistency. Yeah.
Speaking of internet connections, mine is quite dodgy. I'm in Uluwatu in Bali, so I apologize to everyone, including you, if signal drops in and out. I'll try to go back and edit, so it shouldn't be too much of an issue. But
okay, perfect.
Yeah, well, now you're rolling. Now you're the crew coach, and you're in this industry that we all know and love.
Yes, and I think that's the operative word there is love. Like I love what I do, and I think for all of us, it's important to create meaning in the work that you do. So it's going to be hard for me not to interview you because I'm so used to interviewing people, and I want to know about you. Why do you love being a chef? What's your why?
Well, the why is hard to explain succinctly. I've only wanted to cook since I was a kid. Like that's all I wanted to do. So it involved more scholarship, culinary school, working kind of at the best restaurants that would hire me, kind of like what you did for prison. It was like, I don't the pay. Of course, I want to get compensated, but I just want to work at the hardest restaurants I could find. And this is long before Michelin stars in the States. So it was hectic. It was so stressful. I was terrible at it. And then obviously you build a foundation and you get better, you get more confident. And then I heard about yachting. I was like, that sounds incredible. It just sounds like so much travel. And I mean, I think going into it, none of us really know what it is until you're in it, and all those jobs you get in the beginning are terrible for most people. I'd assume like you just get the worst jobs that no one wants because you're a greenie. And then that morphs into, having options and having choices. But I still love it. Like I love the push. I love the pressure. I specifically charter boats. I just love the idea of the team and doing the galley doing like their part to push the trip over the top and just have happy guests. I have weird little goals. Like I want people to try to hire me, off of the boat, and I respectfully decline, things like that, rather than doing it for the money. Like the money comes if you put your drive into something a little more productive, the money is just the pleasant byproduct. But
yes,
that's it. Succinctly as I could.
That's awesome. Yeah, so we're here talking about men and mental health.
Yes. Yeah.
And a topic
that
is close, as I've just mentioned.
Sorry, say that one more time.
Working. So I was just saying this topic is close. Having worked with in prison, I recognized firsthand the impact of not being able to talk or express yourself. And the men that I was dealing with, obviously there was traumatic stress, but there was substance abuse disorder as well. So a lot of them were out of touch with their emotion. And another layer was hard, like the stigma that we were talking about earlier, the attitude of harden the F up.
Yeah.
You don't talk about your feelings. You don't show your vulnerability.
Yeah.
And so that's, I believe, what keeps men stuck from asking for help, because I think as a community and with that stigma, you start feeling ashamed and guilty when you feel those feelings, because you're like, well, I've got to man up. How can I be vulnerable? How can I show my vulnerability if that's a weakness?
Yes, I would agree that, and I can't speak to the East where I am now, but I think that's kind of like the Western default programming to males is just suck it up, get on with it. It's portrayed in Hollywood, it's portrayed in books. But I think it's kind of hopefully run its course, and we can start talking about what's actually healthy and sustainable to be a male and have emotions and have burdens, which, we all do as humans. And I think that's why I wanted to have you on the podcast, because I met an amazing chef, like one of the top chefs in the industry. And I was just getting off Arians, and I was trying to get a taxi, and this woman just kind of cut the line. And I knew she cut the line, and I spoke to her in Spanish, like, you cut the line. She's like, no, I didn't. And she was happened to be strikingly beautiful. And I think she was going to play the hot girl card. And I just finished my rotation. I just got done of my summer season. And I was like, the anger like built up, and I was like, I walked away. I'm like, all right, so you need to start thinking about, you're good. At the end of the season, I feel like for me, I can be very keyed up, like it's been long, stressful, lots of time, no time off. And just your kind of body hurts. So I was like, all right, you're better than usual, but it's still there. And then, so I sat and like had an angry beer while I was waiting for a friend, and this chef showed up. He wants to remain nameless. And he was like, and I didn't even think he liked, there's certain chefs in the industry that don't like other chefs that do anything with social media. And I thought he was one of them. He's like, man, I love your podcast. You should do one on mental health. And he started telling me his story, and it was rough, and he's going through some things, and it's not like there's tangible things that he's got to grapple with along with the job and the stress that goes along with that. So, and that's how, and then I started asking around, like, who should I have on the podcast to talk about this sort of thing? And that was, I think we started talking like 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And then something happened since then, which has directly impacted the industry.
Yes.
And
yes,
we can talk about that anywhere you want with that.
Yeah. Well, there's been 2 suicides in a week. So the week before last was a sous chef, a galley hand on a cruise liner. And according to the article, there were issues happening back home. He requested leave and it was denied, and he ended his life. Then we've recently had a bosun by the name of Clive, but the community know him as Billy, who chose to end his life as well. And an interesting stat that I found a couple of years ago when I did a men and mental health presentation was that a man dies by suicide every minute of every day.
Wow.
I don't know what the stat is now, but that was from a couple of years ago.
How is that in ratio to women? Is it similar or more?
Good question.
You can Google it. I would just be
Yeah,
curious.
we should Google it. But I just know in our industry, I haven't heard of yet a female in recent years
Really?
die of suicide. I'm sure, yeah, I'm not too sure, but all the cases that I've heard in the past 5 years have been men.
Huh. I never would have thought that. I just thought it
There
would
was one Australian, there was one Australian woman that was found dead, but I'm not too sure if that they were wondering whether it was suicide or overdose, and I'm not too sure what the end result was of that. But this is the thing that concerns me. You hear of these deaths and then nothing more.
Yeah.
Or you hear the reports, if you're lucky, years later. Not lucky, but I think it's important for us to have information.
Yeah.
Because we need to put a stop to this. Like, why is this happening? How are crew falling through the gaps here?
Yeah, in a very affluent industry that could actually like afford to
Exactly. We've got the resources.
Look after the crew.
Yeah, we've got the resources.
Yeah.
And I've been hearing from captains, very hard to find quality crew. But then are we taking care of the crew? Like, are we providing them with the support that they need? And as a retention strategy, that should be number one, is crew support.
Yeah, I agree. And that will inevitably get taken advantage of, but we also have to absorb that cost as well. I'm just playing devil's advocate. That's what the captains will say, like, well, why am I going to pay for dad, and if they don't stick around? And it's like, well, the kind of the risk you have to take. You can't just ignore the problem in terms of saving money.
No. Yeah. So yeah, that is a interesting one for me, because I feel like there's that narrow-minded thinking coming into play from a cost-saving perspective. To spend money on these resources is somehow deemed unnecessary, which I find so confusing, because long-term gain, when you think of the cost associated with recruitment and replacing a crew member, that's huge.
Yeah. And overall, maybe I think, like you said, long-term gain, but this could directly positively impact the guest experience, which is the entire point of this industry. So I'm with you on that one.
And another thing that's concerning for me is the poor leadership that we see in our industry.
Yeah.
And I think this is what could be the catalyst with regards to the development or the onset of mental health issues on board. People do not know how to lead.
Do you think that is because the industry grew so quickly?
No, I don't think it's because of that. Feel like it's a lack of, let's say, policies and procedures. So we do have a lot of red tape within our industry, but some people are able to duck right under it and get to where they want to be.
Yeah.
You don't see this sort of behavior happening land-based.
Yeah, it's a bit more wild, wild west in certain areas. Yeah, I agree with that.
How can you just assume a leadership position as a result of time served?
Right.
Like you need to acquire certain soft skills, I think, more importantly.
Yeah.
You can learn how to do service. You can learn how to cook amazing food. But if you've got a team beneath you, you need to know how to inspire them, how to lead them, not necessarily manage. It's a different way of leading people. And it's about transformational leadership. It's understanding the individual, their needs. How do you coach them? How do you motivate them to fulfill their own potential? That's what we're looking for.
Yeah. And I see what you're saying, and it's still, I don't know. I don't have a solution. I don't have an obvious one, but yeah, you're completely right. Completely right. Yeah. Let me put you on pause for 1 second. Sorry. I'll be right back.
Yeah.
So what do you think, how can that problem be solved in terms of, the leadership in the industry and inspiring people and being sympathetic, empathetic to crews' need for kind of inspiration to get the job done at the tail end of the season, and to just keep an eye on people's mental health? Like what would you recommend?
Mandatory leadership training.
Yeah.
I run a 3-month leadership course. It's 3 months for a reason. We're learning to change behavior. You cannot change behavior in 5 days. It's about self-leadership. It's about understanding yourself. When was the last time you had a performance appraisal?
A performance appraisal?
Yeah.
Well, they're done annually on Arians. Yeah, but it's, I don't think it's really like set in stone, like in writing, and it's more of a sit down, but at least it happens.
Yes, it should be how it should look is a conversation, talking about, your strengths. How have you applied your strengths, Brennan? How have you served? How have you contributed to this vessel?
Yeah.
What are you struggling with? What are you stuck on? How can I support you? How can I be of service to you, Brennan, to help you get to where you want to be?
Yeah.
Those are the conversations.
Yeah.
That we should be having.
Yeah. Yeah. Throughout the entire crew, just to give that feedback up. Right.
Yeah. And as leaders, we need to be willing to receive feedback from the team. Like as a captain, you should be asking your crew, how can I be and do better?
Yeah.
It's not one way, because then you're going to be seriously blinded.
Yeah.
The things that you may be doing that are having a serious impact on the team or individuals.
Yeah. I mean, and then that all ties back into mental health and recognizing in your crew, and maybe even in yourself as a leader, what the signs of it, of what you can see outwardly in your crew, and what you might be feeling in yourself, like, oof, I'm on the edge here.
Absolutely. So, Brennan, talking about men and mental health, men tend to show different signs over females. Some are similar, but more specifically with men, you see physical symptoms. So it could be backache, it could be headache, it could be insomnia, it could be stomach issues. Yours. Yeah. Then it can be substance abuse. It can be anger, aggression is another one, and reckless behavior, which is tied in with, say, substance abuse. That's the signs specifically with men, the common signs.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like I said earlier, it's insomnia. It's like I need the sleep, but I can't. I'm exhausted. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was actually thinking about that this morning, because I had 2 nights, I had 3 hours sleep. And then last night I couldn't sleep. I feel like it's a switch in the brain, because in yachting, we're all go, go, go. And our sleep patterns are out of whack. Like, I know on board our yacht, our chef was getting up at 3 a.m. in the morning to serve ice cream to the kids. And
Whoa.
so when you don't have consistency in sleep patterns, it really affects your whole physiology. Yeah, that's it.
I think that's a new kind of, almost, I don't know if renaissance is the right word, but in the last like less than 5 years, the importance of sleep is so huge, and it's been overlooked. It's like, oh, sleep when you're dead, but it's really like you're gonna have a shorter, shittier life if you carry on like that. And like this guy, I can't remember his name right now, is a scientist author, but basically it was pretty cool. He said, like, look, almost every species on the planet sleeps in some way or goes dormant for X amount of time. Like that, if that wasn't completely necessary, that would have mutated away, because you're helpless. You're not breeding, you're not gathering food, you're not defending yourself. You are helpless as a human, a bear, a fish, and that you would have been hyper successful if you didn't have to sleep, because you just would have had more hours in your day. But it's there for a reason.
Yeah, I know. I personally experience short-term memory loss when I don't get enough sleep.
Yeah, same.
That's
I do a lot of
struggle.
dumb shit in the kitchen. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah. So, Brennan, I'm curious to know, with regards to vulnerability, what does vulnerability mean to you?
Okay. Vulnerability, emotional vulnerability, professional vulnerability, intimate vulnerability. Like, what are we talking about here?
Emotional.
Emotional in general.
Yeah.
Well, for me, like, I just kind of pack stuff in, and then I'm just like stewing on it, and I don't really know how to. I don't have a natural purge valve or a way to
An outlet.
assess that it's getting to a point where I need to say something to someone. I don't know if that's what you're asking me, but that's kind of where I went with it. But vulnerability, being able to cry. Like, we're not allowed to cry.
Yeah.
No chance.
No, you won't. No chance you'll cry.
Oh no, I will. But I just meant like that we're not allowed to. You know, we have to like hold that in. And I feel like that's quite funny. Like,
who said though? Who said you need to listen?
I just think society. I just think it's like, I just think we're programmed. You're not allowed to be vulnerable in that way.
So, question for you: how does that serve you by holding it in?
No, not at all.
So why do we do it?
I don't know. I don't know. It's a sign of weakness. We're not allowed to show weakness.
Have you seen a man cry?
Have I? Yeah. Yeah, of course.
Did you think they were weak?
Not at all.
There we go.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have a problem with it. Like, I definitely cried, but why do I have to feel guilty about it? Why do I have to feel weak for it? It's like saying that we're not allowed to be emotional. We're not allowed to care deeply about things. And that's obviously bullshit.
It's definitely bullshit. So how can we change it?
Well, I think we talked about it earlier. Like, it is changing. It feels like it's changing. It feels like mental health is now way higher on the list of priorities across the board than it used to be. So I don't know. I don't have any kind of answers for you. I don't know. I'll openly talk about it though. I think it needs to be done.
You know what happened on a oil rig off the Gulf of Mexico? There was a majority of Texans working on board, and I've never been to Texas, but I'm assuming they're blokey blokes, and they carry that same mentality, like they're hardcore. Yeah. And there was a high accident rate on board. Limbs were being sliced off. And they thought, shit, we need to do something about this. They brought this little French lady in to do what we call in therapy, group therapy. So it's something I did in prison as well. And once there was safety within the room, they started opening up and they were shedding a lot of tears.
Yeah. They've seen friends dismembered and gone off the rig, and
Yeah, so they were sharing very personal issues, and that facade completely dropped.
yeah.
And they became vulnerable. When they allowed themselves to be vulnerable, they were able to apply it on board in the workplace. And what that translated to was an ability to ask for help. They weren't asking for help. That's why they were losing limbs. As a result of doing this personal, deep work, accidents reduced by 86%.
I believe it.
So as men, we need to learn how to ask for help.
Yeah.
Got a text message the other day. I'll see if I can find it because it was very interesting what he had to say. It's almost like, I've just got to soldier on. I have no other option. We always have options.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's one of the many things that I want to talk to you about is like, what are the options? I mean, obviously they can reach out to you, but meditation, I don't know. I just think there's got to be ways where someone like you just mentioned in that text message where like, I've just got a soldier on, I got no other option. It is kind of like, so give us some examples of what the options would be.
For a guy specifically,
Sure.
what are your options? It has to start with being comfortable around asking for help. And you got to get out of your own way.
How would they ask for help? What does that look like? Is that like going to the captain? Is that going to someone else on board? Just like, hey, can I talk? Or
it's approaching someone that you feel comfortable to talk to, someone that you know won't judge you for sharing what you want to share.
Which is almost impossible on a boat in like the first 3 months, 6 months to a year because you're new.
This is why leadership is so important.
Yeah.
Because people will follow you if they respect you and can relate to you. They're not going to follow you just because you're the head of department, just because you're the leader.
Yeah.
It needs to be deeper than that. And so if we can showcase these emotional, let's say, intelligence.
Yes. Love that phrase.
Then people will follow that and go, wow, it's okay. The captain cried in our debrief session today.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen it. I've seen it. I didn't think he was weak. I saw it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it all starts with one person. Because the person who is suffering feels like they're alone.
Yeah.
And they don't want to be a burden.
Yeah.
And it's up to us to be able to recognize the signs and the symptoms and go, hey, mate, are you okay? Do not be scared or put off when they say, I'm fine. And your intuition saying, they're not fine. They've been hanging out in their cabin and declining invites to social events for 2 weekends now. That's odd. He doesn't normally do that.
Yeah.
That's your cue, red flag.
Yeah.
To do something different. Or binge drinking.
Yeah.
We're masking something, perhaps, or we're having a hell of a lot of fun. Could be either.
Yeah.
But you got to look for the signs.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of any examples I've seen. Like I've been yachting for 20 years now, and I'm trying to think of. Well, I just can't come up with any anecdotes right now, but it's hard to tell. No, it's hard to tell. Yeah.
When you're saying it's hard to tell, what are you thinking about in that moment?
I'm just trying to think of examples from my experience of people that were kind of showing the same signs you just mentioned. But I think it's also hard when you're on a busy boat to even recognize the signs because you're all wrapped up in your own department, whatever that is, and just going for it.
Yeah. And especially when you're so busy, you don't
Yeah.
notice.
But I like the
Um,
idea of if someone's usually social and there's not social anymore, like, all right, let's check in on them and make sure they're all right. That's good. Anything else that in the binge
mm,
drinking? Um, I would say like not eating the crew mess. That would be a sign.
yep. Yep. That is one.
Yep.
Um, I think anything that is untoward, so any unusual behavior is normally something.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's being in tuned with that. And we can so easily misinterpret it and going, oh, they're just being moody or they're having a bad day.
Yeah.
But that could be someone bottling up something. And that's the tip of the iceberg that you're seeing. There's a hell of a lot going on underneath.
Yeah.
So this is, yeah.
Well, I was going to say, like, just almost like a weekly check in with your emotional health, because I love this conversation I'm having with you right now. And while I'm having it, I'm like, I want to have more of these conversations just to like check in with myself and make sure, and then have the cognition to check in with other people. Because it just, I don't think about it as much as I probably should. And maybe we don't as a culture, but it's good to just talk about it and just, it's like talking about your physical health, your cardio, or your weightlifting, or yoga, whatever. It's right up there, and we don't talk about it enough.
Have you ever been to therapy?
Oh yeah,
You have.
yeah,
Because I'm
yeah,
like, this is essentially for the listeners. This is essentially what therapy is. It's a conversation. It's a journey of self-exploration. It's amazing. It's so fascinating to have space and time to think about you and your own needs.
yeah. It's. I found it incredibly exactly what you just said, where you're explaining how you feel and your hangups, but then you get the perspective of someone who's a therapist, counselor, whatever the appropriate term is. They have seen such a broader scope of humanity than you in yourself or your close friends and family. Where and you touched on it before, like, oh, you feel alone when you're going through your shit, whatever that shit is. And then you speak to a therapist, like, oh, it's actually super common. It's most likely this, and this. And that alone is like, it's a weight off, you know?
Yeah. And that's it. It's with my male clients more recently. I've asked them, what are you gaining from attending these sessions? And yes, they're getting skills. I send them homework exercises. They are all saying, it's just so nice to talk to someone.
Yeah. Yeah. Because either you're open with your male friends about it, and or you're seeing someone or married, and you can open up to your partner about it, but that's just not always the case. It's nice to have someone kind of neutral to chat to and just check in with. Um, something else I was going to say. I can't remember what it was though.
While you're thinking about it, I'll read you this DM. Another thing which I think a lot of crews struggle with, and this is from a guy, I know I certainly do, is loneliness.
Yeah.
Loneliness, lack of intimacy, lack of understanding, lack of communication, and the almost inability to sustain a relationship. Tough for both guys and girls, but I know how guys struggle to talk, and boats can be a very lonely place.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. It's like, if there's kind of like, it's very hard to reach out to someone on board that might even be like mixed up in whatever drama, or maybe it's got nothing to do with the boat. Maybe it's just something back home that's, or childhood, whatever. Yeah, it is lonely. I would definitely agree. It's, even though you can have really good friends on board, even the captain or chief engineer or deckies and stews, like, they're your friends, but it's like, oof, it's a little bit too sticky of a subject to open up to your crewmates about while we're in the middle of a med season.
Mm. And the thing is, these needs that he's describing, they are primary human needs. So if our safety needs are not met, if our esteem needs are not met, our sense of belonging, connection, then we're going to suffer.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how does one combat that sense of loneliness? It's a weird one because you're living and working with people, you're around people all the time. But the only difference is that it's the meaningful connections that we're after.
Yeah. I think from a crew member standpoint, that does and can happen on board, but it takes minimum like a year, maybe shorter. Maybe it's because I've been doing it so long, but like I do appreciate the people like I live and work with. And but those connections take a while. And I think a lot of that is for me is born through the fire of doing a season where it's just back to backs and you see people really high, you see people really low, and you love them anyway. I think that's the special part about being crew on board. But yeah, it unfortunately takes time. So what if someone joins a boat and they've already got things that they need unpacking or help to unpack? Who do they turn to on board? It's hard.
Really hard. Do you think vessels should have the option for counseling for crew members?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Should be part of the insurance package.
Yeah.
And like we
And
talked about
then,
before, that ultimately impacts the owner experience, the guest experience positively when you retain healthy, happy crew.
but
And
also
financial.
energy is palatable, as you said. Like, if someone is fluctuating highs and lows, you can feel that.
Yeah.
Like people are tired at the end of the season.
Yeah.
You can feel it. And so will the guests. It will bleed through to the guest environment.
Yeah.
This is why, again, adequate rest, not to make crew lie about their hours. Like it's so vital. But as a chef, very hard and curious to know for you, how do you manage that? The demands of the industry, because you've got to be on all the time and it might not be structured. Their preferences might be different.
I'm not following that question. Ask that one more time.
So as a chef, with your role, in my eyes, I see it quite different in terms of, look, the cabin's being turned over, etc. There's a time that you do that. It's routine. But you may have guests who want to eat at midnight, then another set of guests that eat at 6 p.m. So the consistency, there is no consistency. It's a bit of like a yo-yo, which would affect you. So how does that affect you? What does that look like?
I don't mind that type of yo-yo. The hard part is when it's 24-hour service. When you got to do drunk food in the middle of the night, that's brutal. Then you get like a couple hours sleep. You get up, you make some dumb food that they want, and then a couple more hours sleep, and that's really disruptive to my mental health, to anyone's mental health. It's so I feel like a crazy person if I don't get enough sleep. Like I just feel like I'm not myself. Like everyone annoys me. Like, but that's there's no real way around it right now.
What would you like to see?
Oh, 8 hours of sleep, no matter what. That would be amazing. I know, and believe me, I know how unrealistic that is in this industry at this point. But that would be unbelievable. Yeah.
But is it possible to organize, do you think?
Oh, captains give you this question all the time. Like, yeah, can't you just organize your day better?
No, not like organize your day better, but in terms of like support that you could get to have those allocated hours.
No, not at this point. It comes down, in my mind, it comes down to just more bunks on board. I think boats are getting built bigger with higher expectations and less bunks. It's like, oof, it's just a slip. It's going to go bad for a while before people change it.
Yeah. That's a huge part of it. Yeah.
And that's all departments. I'm not just saying that for the galley. I've seen stews run down. I've seen deckies run down. I've seen NJOs run down. I've seen captains run down. It's like we're asked to do a lot, and that's what makes us good or not good at our jobs. Like we can pull it off. So there's that too. It's kind of hard. You know, when these boats are built, it's the guest areas are in mind, as they should be, but the crew areas are not, and that includes service areas. So we're not in the transportation business. We're in the hospitality industry, and those parts of the boats are completely overlooked until the end, and that's important as well. That would be an effective change.
Okay, so just moving forward on that topic in terms of improvements, if you can reflect back on the worst vessels you've worked on and then the best, can you describe a bit in terms of what that looks like? So yeah, I'm sure the listeners would be able to go, hold on a minute, I'm in that bracket and it's not healthy, it's not okay, maybe I need to move.
Let me see. The worst. That's going to be hard, because the worst I wouldn't have stuck around for. I'm pretty cutthroat.
Even in your earlier days.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think back. Like, yeah, I mean, there was a couple where it's a really like live aboard owners, and she was. I can just say the name. My Maryland, and that was a hilarious boat back in the day, because all green chefs just ripped through that job. She was mentally unstable, micromanaged the galley, and just a really toxic environment. I was on a 150-meter new build, also such a toxic environment. And it was leadership, just perpetuated by the leadership. Really, the kind of like cowardice behavior was rewarded, and lots of people in tears, lots of people quitting, lots of people getting fired. Wouldn't recommend that shit. But like, and if this is going out to crew, which it definitely is if it's toxic, just leave. Just, it's not worth it, you know, like within reason. Don't sell the boat short, don't leave straight away, but give your notice, and then
Yes.
Not worth
And
it.
yeah, but the thing is, I think crew are petrified of doing that, because the whole concept of crew longevity, you need it on your CV. I've just got to push through. Not freaking worth it.
No, it's not.
Get out. You're better than that.
It's hard in the beginning. And I can't say whether it's a good or bad, but like, yeah, you do, for whatever reason, need that in the beginning in order to step up to get the good job. And that's just the way. I'm not saying that's right, but that's definitely what the industry is geared towards. Like, you just gotta fuck it up. And unfortunately, it's really hard for green crew to step onto an established, healthy boat. I mean, I feel when I'm hiring a sous chef, like I'm not going to take on a green sous chef. The job's too hard. Just can't do it. I can't take the risk. So, and that's, for whatever reason right now, the reality of the industry. Healthy? No.
Yeah, it is a tough one, but I think the industry is more cognizant of the fact that there are boats out there. So and you're right, it's absolutely hard to resign. And if you're green, thinking, well, I don't have much experience, am I going to get hired again? And how long do I have to wait until I find another job? But there are compassionate and empathetic recruiters out there that if you do share your story and be very honest with them why you've left, I'm sure they'll do their best to help you out.
Yeah, absolutely. It's in the recruiter's best interest to do that as well. But I think it's a double-edged sword with recruiters, because they will put someone on a shit boat to make some money. And then I guess it's up to them to pick up the pieces after that fell apart and put them on another boat. I don't know. Yeah, I think, and there's different levels to recruitment. I don't mean to like whitewash all of them, but some are scrupulous and some are not. It's all right. It's up to greenies to figure that out, to ask the right questions when they do meet like veteran crew, to be like, what do you think of this crew agent? And Someone like me would be like, don't do it. Don't listen to
Mm,
anything they say.
mm. Yeah. Yeah, it's providing also, the right guidance as
Yeah.
well, I think is crucial because, we can really put our foot in it if we don't come from a good place.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's why I wanted to have you on and some of my previous guests on Get the Fork Out, because I want resources that are like, of course they're biased, but I have no dog in the fight. Like I want to see problems solved, or like I'm not trying to make any money off this. There's no incentive other than passing along some information that may or may not be useful, especially to green crew, to green chefs. I want these kind of recordings in a place where if you Google it, you can just find it. And it's two people
Yeah.
like otherwise, how would someone in their first 3 months of the industry have access to someone like me and access to someone like you? They wouldn't even know we existed, or that
No.
to ask the right questions. So again, that's kind of why I do Get the Fork Out, is I just want to
Yeah.
make it easier for people to, because after a while, people just find you on social media and they want to ask you like these kind of complicated, nuanced questions, and there's a spot. Just go there, watch it, listen to it. But
Yeah, which is so helpful, especially if you're on a vessel where you don't feel safe and you're scared to ask a question. I know I felt like
yeah,
that in the beginning. I was scared if I asked a question, then I would not be good enough and I'd be fired. So if you can do what you're doing, which is an amazing to be able to have that offering as a resource for crew to refer back to your interviews and find the resources that they are looking for, because there's some leaders out there that wouldn't do that for their crew.
yeah, yeah. I feel like as I get on in the industry, it's kind of like my role. And if you ask me 5 years ago whether I would do it, no, just my career moving forward up. That's it. And now I'm like, nah, you've got the resources to get back, and yeah, but
Yes, and that's what I was just thinking. That operative word, giving back, and that's what you're doing, is giving back.
yeah,
And how amazing is that you're serving in an even bigger way?
no, it feels really good. But I mean, I am by a long way away from. I think we should, because now we're talking about my podcast. We just steer back to men's mental health, and like, yeah, I'm uniquely flawed as everyone else, and I just try to like do the best I can with what I have. But I am far from having this all sorted out. So I just want, and I'll say that openly on. I think we all struggle, and to ignore the mental health aspect of that, or to just Instagram everything's fine and everything's great, I'm living my best life. Meanwhile, it's like, you're scrubbing the corners of the walk-in with a toothbrush, which is actually, I love that shit. I don't know why I reference that. Like, I don't know. I just think it's, I like I said before, I think these conversations need to happen more often. I almost needed like a put a reminder on my phone to reach out to someone and just talk about mental health, whether it's theirs,
Yeah,
mine, but just to realize that it's part of your overall health, and it
it
needs to
is.
be addressed and not ignored.
It is. And even for the other thing is community is
Yes.
vital. So
Yeah.
finding your tribe, your community, your network that you can have those conversations with, I think, it's absolutely necessary. We move from boats to boats, but your core people will always be your core people.
Yeah.
And, start thinking about that now. Who are my people? Who
Yeah.
do I feel safe to talk to? Who can I be open with? Because then if you don't do that, it's going to feel extremely lonely and isolating. So that's another preventative measure, is having that support network.
And back to greenies too. Like, if you imagine if you just packed, you got rid of your rental apartment, you sold your car, you just got in the industry, you're 2 months in, you have your core people, but maybe they're in South Africa and they're at the opposite time zone. And then you're just I remember those first days in the industry. It's super lonely. You just don't even know if you're doing it right. You have no idea. And let's be honest, like deep, meaningful connections with other humans don't happen like that. It kind of has to happen organically. So yeah, those beginning years are quite interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So now with that time that's passed, in terms of the conversation, so you've been on your vessel for a couple of years now, in terms of the conversations that are held, are they superficial, or does one take the risk? Have you heard it within the crew mess or on a night out, people having those meaningful conversations or talking about mental health or opening up, being vulnerable, anything like that?
I want to say no, not that it's unhealthy. I don't know. We're just busy.
So maybe that's the other problem, is people are not making the time for it.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah. And this goes back to me saying, like, I just need a reminder every week to like check in with myself, maybe friends or crew members. Like, you guys good? Like, what's going on? It's like exercise.
It is. And another important tip, and this is what we practice in the leadership course, is to check in and ask them, how are you feeling?
Yeah.
For about a month, they will say fine and good. And I challenge them, I'm like, that's not a feeling word. What is fine?
Right. It usually doesn't mean good.
Good. So they break that habit after a month and go, okay, I'm feeling anxious today because I got to do a presentation, or I'm feeling sad today because of X, Y, and Z. And they're able to pick up on those words, because this is what's going to help them moving forward as leaders when they have their team. It's keeping people accountable with regards to how they're feeling. And it would be easier for us to pick up if there's something quite not right. So if someone says to you, I'm feeling fine, and someone else is saying, I'm sad, you've got something to work with if someone's feeling sad. Okay, why are you feeling sad? What can I do to help you?
Yeah.
With the fine, you don't know what's going on in there. There might be an internal struggle that you're not aware of that you could actually help address.
Yeah, I think that word it usually means less than good. If I'm fine, it's like,
Yeah. Bryn, do you have anything else that you would like to ask me? Because the babysitter's going to leave soon.
All right. How much time you got left?
I've got about 5.
5. Well, let's do you now. Like, what's a good way for people to like reach out to you? Obviously, the crew coach on all social media, but I think you're kind of a lightning rod for these conversations in the industry because of who you are, the name, and so how can people get in touch with you?
You're most welcome to flick me a DM. I love sending voice notes, and I'll certainly help you out in whatever way I can. If you are interested in something like counseling, my best advice to you is to book a discovery call, because you need a rapport with your therapist for it to work. If you don't feel the vibe or the connection, it's not going to work. I've had many different therapists, and the ones that I didn't connect with, didn't have a therapeutic alliance with, it was not effective. It's a waste of time. So more than welcome to book a 15-minute free chat, and we can have a chat to see what your goals are and whether it's going to work for you. It's important that you focus on your needs, and it needs to be a right fit. How else can you connect? Email.
Real quick, a question on that. How would someone recognize whether or not it's the right fit with a therapist? I know it's probably not going to fit in 5 minutes, but.
Okay. So again, I think it's intuitive. If you feel like they are relatable, that you feel like you feel comfortable, that's a good one. If they make you feel comfortable, and if the conversation flows, if it's natural, Like, this is the first time we have spoken in this format. And I feel like I've known you for ages. Like, it's really easy to have a chat. And I don't know about you, but personally, I'm enjoying the conversation.
Yeah,
So I think it's, yeah.
I as well. But I imagine, like, I mean, you're a very relatable person, and you're easy to talk to as well. And I just think that is probably like in my like lesser experience, or the experience the other side of the couch, is that, yeah, you just want to be able to have like good open chats and not feel judged, and given like examples and tools to, honestly, if I can't recommend therapy enough. It's helped me a lot. I've got issues from childhood, issues from adulthood, like, it helps.
And thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We all have a story. We all have a story that makes
Yeah.
us unique as well. And this is the beauty of therapy. You're able to turn it into strength, into resilience, into growth.
Absolutely.
So it becomes a new story. It's not a painful story. It's a new story.
Yeah. And like, if scars grow back stronger, and bones break, and you just kind of get better. And I mean, I love the term emotional intelligence, because it's just, I'm trying to get better, because I wasn't born with the skills to just kind of figure it out on my own. So it has helped me massively. Yeah.
Great. So besides counseling, is there any other personal development work you've done?
Say it again.
Besides counseling, have you done any other personal development type of work?
In terms, well, like career or exercise, or?
No, so more like psychology or self-improvement, self-development.
Dabbled in meditation for a while, and I love it and respect it. I'm not drawn to it. It just doesn't hook me. Is that what you meant?
Yes.
All right.
And that's totally okay. So for those who are listening, I recommend you just trial different things. You mentioned tools. Essentially, what you're doing is you're developing your toolbox of skills. So with men in therapy, it is slightly different. Men like things direct. Tell me what it is that I need to do, and I'll go do it. Yeah. So we start talking about homework exercises that they need to go and trial and come back, and then we process it, and we're like, how did that work out for you? How are you feeling? And dealing with the cognition. So cognitive behavioral therapy is evidence-based, and essentially what it is, it's looking at your thoughts, because a lot of us, I think all of us actually, because there's so many different types of unhelpful thoughts, we have unhelpful thoughts that impact how we feel, that influences our behavior, that produces a particular outcome. If we can target our thinking, then the outcome will be different. However, we're not aware that the thoughts are connected to belief systems that could have developed at a young age. Or it could be a series of, let's say, bad experiences on board that influences how we see the world. And it might be our truth. But at the end of the day, it's not fact, it's opinion. So until we can shed the light on what those unhelpful belief systems are, then we will have a change. Otherwise, you're just going to feel stuck, and you're just going to have that reoccurring pattern of behavior and those horrible feelings, those uncomfortable feelings. So it's about having the courage to face that, having the courage to ask for help.
That's amazing right there, everyone. I mean, those are the tools, how you related your thought patterns versus feelings versus outcome. Like, that's what I'm talking about. For me, when I hear things like that, they lock in, and I are much more cognizant of, I'm doing that, stop doing that. But without someone, as you said, shining light on it for you, hard to have the emotional intelligence on your own just to figure that out. For me. Yeah.
No, absolutely.
But I know you have a
Brennan,
babysitter. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Brennan, it's so funny though, because when you reached out to me, you're like, this will be about an hour. I'm thinking, no, won't be possible. I'm pretty sure it'll only be 20 minutes. I was like,
Yeah.
I've never spoken, I don't think, for an hour before. So I was like, I can't do an hour. I've got nothing to say. I don't have anything valuable to say. So even
Come
myself,
on.
I
No
have
way.
those limiting beliefs, thinking like
Yeah.
imposter syndrome. Like, I can't do it. What am I going to talk to him out of for 1 hour for? I don't have enough knowledge.
But that's great.
And
You're
that's
just
me being vulnerable. Yeah.
you're displaying your vulnerability. You're displaying
Yeah.
your like self-sabotaging mechanisms, because I knew we would have hours of stuff to talk about. Because like psychology and counseling, emotional intelligence is like limitless. Like I've only just scratched the surface. You know a ton more than I do, and your perspective is valuable when things like this happen in the industry. And
Mm.
yeah, we just have to talk about it more as a community, as a yachting community, or a chef community, or male chef community, whatever. But yeah, I'm really happy that you took the time out of your day, and we could have this chat.
My pleasure. My dream would be to come on board and have this sort of chat with the entire crew. So yeah, if there was some sort of disagreement that was occurring, whether in the deck department or between the deck and the interior of the galley, and just having a open conversation and working the room, working the emotions in the room, and coming to a place of harmony. That would be my ultimate, because I love the uncomfortable, like working
Conflict resolution.
Yeah, I just love that, because so much growth comes from pain.
Yeah, this is factually correct. And you can't have good days without bad days. So yeah, one of the things I've taught myself, especially through this motorcycle trip, is which has been 15 years off and on, but like whenever I have a terrible day where it's breakdowns, or maybe I came off and hurt myself, tomorrow will always be better. And that's not always going to be the case, but most of the time tomorrow is always better. Unless you're like a terminal illness, tomorrow will most likely be better.
Yeah.
And that's got me through a lot of rough days where you're like, fuck this, what am I doing? Why am I in the sands of Kazakhstan right now? I'm miserable. Yeah, that's another story.
And that's just as we wrap it up. If you are struggling right now and finding it difficult to see light at the end of the tunnel, at the end of each day, just either write 3 gratitudes or 3 wins. Yeah. Because I promise you, things will change for you once you're able to get into that pattern of thinking of the positives, what you do have, rather than coming from a place of lack, what you don't have. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's a good again, another tool, another idea for people just struggling right now. And as we come into this really busy part of the year coming up, for the winter season in yachting. But yeah, let's try to avoid seeing any more suicides, and having crew members have like trepidation about like reaching out, or honestly, what's the worst that would happen? Someone just doesn't have time for you, like, or the repercussions just keep building, and someone's ending their life for lack of a better word, for just not having help and the resources around them. And like, yeah, but I mean, keep saying the same things, but I think it's just really great to have this conversation with you, especially now. And we planned on this before, and then this happened. But
yeah. So I think from this conversation, what I'm walking away with is just be kind, lead with kindness, just be kind, and you can't go wrong. Kind to yourself, kind to others.
Yeah, starting with yourself, for sure. Yeah. Well, Karine, thank you very much for coming on board for this episode of Get the Fork Out. The crew coach, find her everywhere. Please reach out if you need any help. She's amazing. Thank you for coming on this episode.
My pleasure. Thanks, Brennan. Take care.
Welcome. See ya.
Bye.